referable. So welcome back to those of you on the video in our first session this morning in this Lit 1, first lesson on Module 1 of English 2 Text and Culture, Folklore, Fairy Tales and the Gothic. We looked at reading lists and we then went over to the YouTube channel and had a look at all the audiobooks, films and various versions that were available there. That's your main job during this term for me, is I want you interacting with primary texts. Yeah. As you can see, as you look here, this is 502. I've also included the fantastic introduction in Philip Pullman's wonderful Grimm Tales collection. I'm going to refer to it and use it in my presentation. I've added it for you as well, and that's the kind of extra reading we'll be doing as we're going along. You can also see down here, I've been using, and so I've also literally taken pictures of and shared with you the wonderful Cunk on Everything, which is based on a British television show. Some of you may have seen it already on the BBC with this character. It's Diane Abbott, Philomena Cunk, where she explores literature and history. Yes, what does Cunk mean? I don't know. It implies lots of words, doesn't it? But it doesn't actually say anything. So it's a portmanteau, if you will, like one of the administrators from York. She said she described a Conservative politician as a twant. So if you try and work out what that is, then I'm sure you can probably work out what Cunk may or may not mean. But Cunk on Britain, which is also, it's in the Text, Society and Culture section, there's quite a few links to the TV shows, basically interrogates culture through the mindset of the modern telephone using generation. And it's hilarious. Po-faced, as in written as if it's serious, very, very intelligent, and where you think it's at times just silly, it does actually ask very important questions. You can also see that I've linked to I didn't give you reading, though there's plenty of reading out here. In terms of educational theory, I've just linked to some of the films in the playlist because I don't want to overload you. We're going to talk a little bit about self-determination theory today, and motivation, which I think goes, hand in hand with this issues of reading and text and how we motivate people. And I'm going to probably bring up point 2 and frame a theorist. Oh, okay. Oh, it's a zip file. Let's have a look. This is a zip file, so it's a collection. You should be able to click on that zip file, right? And then you should get, if you see there, you should be seeing it, you should get a download. And you should get a download of the zipped file. I'll be doing this a lot because rather than taking sources from the internet, I actually like to have the books. So I'll be taking pictures of books, and that's fine. That's within my 15% educational purposes remit. So I'm allowed to share that with you. That, Ingen, would have given you a zip file, which I should be able to, you're not going to be able to share. And then you just need to unzip that file. Let me just share that with you as well so you see what it is I'm doing. Share application, share it all. Let's just share desktop, then you'll be able to see the whole lot. That should take you to, so that archive.zip I've downloaded, and that was done on a Mac, and it will unzip, but here it should also do that. You should be able to just, you can see the Mac OS X there. You should be able to double click on that folder, and then it will give you in order. Let's double check this for you as I'm sharing the desktop. It should just give you the JPEG files. Interesting. Is you getting that same response? Oh, no. There we go. It's so it didn't do it first of all, but then it is. So let me know if you do or don't succeed with that, because this is something I will be using. I have a lot of books, and so rather than trying to point you to them, or I'd like you to concentrate your reading on your primary text that you've bought. But I'm like this. I think is a wonderful little introduction from this book. So I'm going to give you. Oops, didn't want to do that. So I'm going to just click there. Just take pictures of it and show you exactly this. So I've included this introduction. It's only about 6 or 7 pages, and I'll be using a section of that page of these pages. I think it starts on. I think there's a bit of history, but it's not particularly knowing like the details. That's very interesting. It's the sections from this file 1571 where he actually asks the question, what is it about fairy tales? What is it that they have in common that I'm interested in? I'm interested in the technique in literature rather than the history part, which you can find out and you could basically look up on Wikipedia. So I hope that, Ingen, is that, have you then, let me just get that up. You shouldn't have to. Oh, are you on an iPad? Oh, sorry. Aha, maybe that is it. It's basically, yes, sorry, it's a compressed, I didn't even see that bit. It's a compressed file. Worst case scenario, you will be able to look at it on an iPad. They're just JPEGs, but rather than provide you with 17 JPEGs in a list, which is well boring in it, and I can't actually do that with Canvas. I can't get 17 files into one link. I have to do 17 links, which is just the most boring thing in the universe. So that's to know. I've included sections from those books. I'll see if I can come up with better ways of doing it via Canvas. Yeah. Okay, cool. I've included a PDF form of my little presentation, which we will go through in this session today. And I've got it there as a PowerPoint as well. York signing up, we could maybe deal with immediately, because then I can move on. We had the response for York. I've now included a document. I will be in touch with them this week. It's week 15. As you know, it was awesome last time. I'm hoping as many people as possible can come. Excuse me, it seems like I've had a cold for like the last 2 months. I don't know what's going on. I haven't been able to go like to the gym or train or anything. It's sort of like self-perpetuating. What I need you to do is to just complete and if you start a discussion thread and then add them to them, that's fine. If not, I might do a hand-in on assignments, probably in lunch today. That's probably the easiest. I just need to know, you need to commit for York for numbers at this stage, because we've got a booking and I need to get back to them and let them know what's going on. It's as you can see there, yes, I'd like to go. You can tick and take a picture. A picture's good enough off a phone. It's as good as a scan. Why do we need scanners? I'm going to go stay at the Norwegian Study Centre. The USM will bill me after the trip. I pay and arrange the return trip to York myself. Very important. I know that you can do group bookings, but I'm not going to be able to organise that for you or with you. One thing I can say is I, this time, have learnt my lesson and I'm going to rent a car because last time the trains were unreliable and super expensive, which is really sad, but in this case pretty true, I'm afraid. And when my students last time, they ended up renting a car, and it was a good idea because obviously if you get a 5-seater, that's 5 of you sharing that expense, and I think that will actually be cheaper and give you flexibility. So we can talk about that as you go along. I think that might be, I know Louise is not here anymore, but that might be a good option. It also could allow us to then go to a couple of other sites during the week. Could be interesting because it's week 15, so it's sort of light out and we have later evenings. 2,000 norska kronor. 1,000 if you cancel, you get billed anyway, 2 weeks before or less before the trip. That's for your seminars and the stay. And then you can say, if possible, for 200 kroner extra, which is a donation to the school, you can go on a half-day visit to a school, which was very, very interesting. So then you sign your billing address and contact information. I will put up an assignment under assignments. They're not there yet. We'll talk about assignments in a minute. So you should then be able to pop that in there or start a discussions thread as well. So I'm hoping that a good few of you will be able to come because it's a fantastic trip. Okay, so that's York. That's the situation there. That document's in the module for today. Let's push on and just quickly go to syllabus page, which has the entire Emnaplan and then has all your lectures and calendars in the calendar as usual, which is downloadable and updatable. And so therefore it's important to remember that today, if I click on today, has got complete information about content, about any educational methodology that will be brought up or referred to. It's got the tasks for those if any reason you can't be here as well. So there's a basic lesson plan, if you will, involved. When it says obviously content, that means things that I will discuss that will be teacher-led or presented in some way, and then tasks are student-led and content-based, task-based activities. So that's already laid out. It's not laid out for the rest of the course. I will do it on a weekly basis, okay? So that's the important one there. The timings are all the same as well. 9 to 11:30, 2 sessions in the morning with a break, 12:30 to 1500, as that seemed a good point to finish generally to allow people time for school pickup, etc. And that will be 2 sessions with a break, really clear. Basically, it means it will be 2 hours teaching in each moment, more or less, and plenty of break time, and an hour will be given for lunch. We might be able to sort of grab a bit either side if we need it, but that's pretty much what we're going to stick with. I think it's good to have that routine. So I'm going to pip out of that. And as you can see, they are Lit 1, Lit 2, that's the first module. Lit 3, there's picture books. 4 and 5 is fantasy. And then you've got Lang 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which are the language and pronunciation lessons and that module with James. Then we've got Reading Week, which sounds like a bit of a luxury when it comes down to it, but that's for half term. Yeah, that's a thing. I've done that. And then we finish all our literature sessions with animal stories completed. We then have, as I've been told according to your schedule, I really hope there are no changes here, 4 weeks of practice, 10, 11, 12, 13, if I'm not mistaken there. Back for a week for week 14, York in week 15, week off for Easter in week 16, and then the final course meets, which are basically reviews more than anything else, and exam preparation for both language, where you have an exam, skriftlig prova, which means it's a school examen. We'll look at that in a moment. And preparation for English, for text and culture, where you have an oral exam which is in June. So we'll do practice, etc. for that. So there's the term laid out. I can potentially use week 7, which is down as reading week, for lessons, etc. At the moment, I've put in no sessions or time for self-study, as we did quite a lot last term for discussion groups. You've got a couple of arbetskrav, course requirements to do, one for literature and one for language. We'll discuss those because I want to keep a little bit fluid with those, and what we're going to hope to do is to get you to work actually in groups, to make sure that you have what I see as a focus on your reading this term. You're going to get a couple of arbetskrav course requirements, which are group activities where you're going to combine and integrate pronunciation, text and culture, and educational methodology. And you're going to be able to choose. That's the important thing as well. You can choose the genre or area of literature. You can choose the aspect of pronunciation, and you can choose any particular areas of educational methodology, motivation, formulaic language, all sorts of things, like growth and fixed mindsets, different theorists that are going to be featured in every. You're going to get one per literature session. So let's have a look through the old Emnaplan. Oh, it's not that different, to be honest. There's a couple of words which are slightly different on either side, but let's have a look at the basics. I assume you've read through it as well. Text and culture, intercultural teaching or intercultural competence, I'd say probably in English, through the use of texts. Texts in the broader sense here, meaning films, television, pictures, art. And so we will be looking at intercultural competence, but rather than slamming it down your throat, as that, it will come as an area of educational methodology. And I think all our texts in all of it as we develop, we'll be looking at intercultural learning. Texts for children and for young people from English-speaking countries. Yes, big tick for that. Lots of that going on. Basic knowledge of genre and genre theory. And that's basically how we're going to work with this, as you've seen with the upplägg, the structure of the course into different sort of genre groups, and we're going to work very much with genres. And rather than giving you set texts, we're going to look at genre areas, and then we're going to give you a chance to maybe specialize with your arbetskrav in groups into things that interest you, and basic skills, reading, writing, and digital skills. And yes, it's going to be loads of reading and looking at engaging and motivating readers in the classroom. We're going to do that through writing as well, and that's how we're going to engage with texts. And we're going to look at, like I said, we're going to have a focus a bit more this term on the what I call the fun parts of writing, narrative and descriptive writing, which is often how you're going to work in a classroom. You're going to say, okay, what's the character? Let's describe a character. What's the setting? What are they wearing? And that's all going to be descriptive writing. And then we're going to tell stories. And we're going to work out how stories work, and that's going to be narrative writing. So really, really cool for this term, I think. I hope. And Det engelska språkets struktur och system del 2, which is not the snappiest title in the world. Let's be honest. English as a world language, which is a fun part of this sort of area, and leads on very well into English 3 and 4, where we look at English as a global language particularly, and we look at identity and intercultural competence. and in English 4, where we explore text and culture in a much more sort of rigorous and broader historical aspect, and we look at more advanced texts as well, which can still be used or abridged or adapted for use in the classroom as well, or have intertexts that are used in the classroom. It's a basic pronunciation and intonation, which sounds very posh, but really sort of looking at how the basics of pronunciation, sentence stress, how all these other sort of functional parts of the area you could call phonetics, but it's not really phonetics. It doesn't say phonetics there. Work. I don't think we're going to put a lot of stress. I will speak to James on phonetic notation, because you really don't use that a lot in the classroom. And excuse me, primarily it's often used with students in ELT, English language teaching, who come from countries with tone languages like Japan or Korea, where they have 5 main tones, where you've got rising, falling, dropping, rise, fall, fall, rise, and they have to work very strongly with pronunciation. And then cultural conventions for use of language, which is basically dialects, accents, and social dialects. So I'm not going to go through this in too much detail at the moment. I think you can all read and see. This is quite long. This is one of the old GLU ones. As you can see, it says sort of discipline-based and subject-based knowledge, and LK06, and that's why we're sort of bringing in lots of, for me, I will sort of try and link everything quite strongly to DC and Ryan, for example, self-determination theory this week, probably Dr. Judy Willis's idea about growth and fixed mindsets next week. I'm going to bring in lots of educational methodology, as you're now in English 2, so we're really going to try and sort of beef up that part of the course as well. So there's all these other elements, but I'm going to get down to the bit that you could almost skip straight to, which is the following. Let's have a look at deltagelse, obligatoriska arbetskrav. What's obligatory? What's mandatory? Compulsory? It all is. If you're not here, that's totally cool. I get that. That's why I record it. These presentation sections, I just expect you exactly the same as last term. It's all on YouTube. All the material is there. There's the theory. It's all there. Everything that I do in the classroom here is all there. You can audit it if there are other circumstances. You're adults. I believe in you. Yes, we can. And then if you cannot be present for the tasks, again, I expect you to sort that out and submit. Okay, it's really that simple. If you don't do that, I will be like up your ass like a fire for an oral exam, which is 60% of it, because in that oral exam, all the stuff we do in those tasks. Okay, Ida, don't worry. OmniJoin. Love that with a Y as well. It sounds like a sort of children's. Hello, children, and welcome to OmniJoin. All the tasks just play into your final examination. So for me, there's no advantage in not completing the tasks. There's none whatsoever. Skipping anything is not going to help you. And in the end, you're going to end up in a room in an oral examination, and I'm going to be there. And if I know you haven't been there for bits of it, I'm going to know that. So I don't really feel that I need to police you, because those bits of the course where they're task based with me, they are all going to be things that you're basically going to develop the skills that you will need in the end to pass the examination and get the A I want for all of you. Let's have a look as well. So this is what's you still have skriftlig examen for the pronunciation part with James. It's only 5 or 6 sessions, and yet you get a 40% mark based on those. So you've got a textbook, and you get a written exam at the end of it. So that's clearly what you're going to be doing in one section to it. You've got sorry, I should have said this first as well. 2 Arbeitskrav, yeah, 2 course requirements. Those are pass-fail. We'll be doing those in groups. I haven't specified them yet because I want to talk to James a little bit more about what we're doing. The pronunciation could well be, for me, integrated with a work of literature and a bit of educational methodology. For me, I think that would be, sort of, you would combine issues of motivation with pronunciation, working with pronunciation, and sorry, excuse me, not available, and combine it with a genre or a piece of literature. And that's how we're going to integrate the entire course. We might also leave one of these course requirements until after you've done your teaching placement, and that means as well what we can actually do is use one of those and say, okay, we want to do this as an investigative report, observation style from your period of practicum. And that's another way of doing it, and I've left that open at the moment, so I want those to be fully integrated into the course. I think I'd like one of them to be based on your practice period, and that allows us to try and sort of evaluate that. Even if you don't get to do all the English you want to, you can still think about pronunciation, for example, and some of the issues, or you could use some of the issues in terms of educational methodology, according to your interest in the area. So that's how we're going to do those 2 Arbeitskrav. I've set aside a day for presentation. What I will probably do, most importantly, is it says reading, writing, and digital skills. So yes, Kristen, it's all with James. It's all with James, yeah. I've set aside one day there. What we could do, even with let's say it's an oral report, or it could be a digital report where you do it digitally and then we all look at them together. Sorry, the garage with my car is okay. My car's ready to be collected all of a sudden. I see. Whatever. So we could do a digital hand in there as well, where everybody submits, and then we actually sort of either I vet it or we spend a day looking at it and doing a experience sharing exercise as well. I'm not up for presentations. I'm going to try and keep it as low key as possible for that. For example, if it were based on for the literature section, what we might do is what's called structured discussion, which is what the oral examination is, which is you prepare to talk about something with notes, and you structure it first, and then you deliver it, and you can say record it in OmniJoin, and then we do that, because that's very much what the oral examination will be as well. It'll be a chance for you to you can bring a sheet and a prep sheet with you. You can structure your discussion in advance. Okay, it's not a memory test on how well on the day you happen to be able to talk about the different genres in adult fiction with me. It's going to be something that you can prepare for, and that's really important. So we're probably going to have a discussion in the next week about those tasks. We're going to want to see them as best we can to reflect available choices and options, and to integrate the courses as best as possible. Question off the wall. Can we choose to have it at campus? You're talking about the oral exam, I'm guessing? Yeah. So I have not seen, when I look at the Emnaplan, right? Let's have a look there as well. En individuell muntlig examen innan delämnet text och kultur täller 60% av ändlig karaktär. Den examen tar sitt utgångspunkt i tema från pensum och föreläsningsseminarier. Okej, ja. Inlevererat arbete kan också bli gjort till en resa. It says nothing. It says that classic sentence, ingen hjälpmedel till skriftlig examen, which means that has to be, according to that, unless I can get that changed, that has to be school examen, so you have to come in for that. For the individual exams, I would like it, for me, ideally, I've done this before where you've done it online. I would rather it were in person, because even though that can also be nerve-wracking, I think online is, I don't know, a bit weird, to be honest. So I'm joking. I think that would be better, and in my mind, I'm preparing for the fact that we will have like 4 days, maybe even more than that. Like there'll be a week of an oral examination. That oral examination will be you and me. You talk to me, right? There has to be a third party examiner who basically, I don't really, I don't need them to take part in it. It should be a discussion between you and me because you know me. And then when you come into that exam, it doesn't say anything here about that. I will, basically give you some kind of choice in advance, maybe based on your Arbetskrav or a limited set of choices. So you'll be able to come in and talk about something pre-prepared, and then we'll also do sort of you'll be able to basically have a sheet with you as well, a memory sheet. Okay. So it's not like reading from a paper, but you can have notes with you. That's the important thing. And that's what I mean by structured discussion, because academic discussion never takes place from memory because it would be rubbish. Okay, it's always done in reference to stuff. So, the books would be there, but you'll be able to basically bring in a sheet and say, make sure these are the things that I want to say. Yes, and so it should do, but it also makes it better. And that's the most important thing. It makes it much, much better. So if you've got like a list of stuff and theory that you want to talk about, and you say, look, I want to talk about, Dr. Judy Willis, her work on motivation, it's been really important to me. She's talked about the teenage brain and the stress reflex, and that's why teens get bored in class, because as soon as it means nothing to them, as soon as they can't relate to the context, their their prefrontal cortex switches off, and they literally go. It's a great bit of research. We'll be looking at this in class, teens and preteens. If they find things uninteresting, they have a stress reaction, a bit like an animal running away from a predator, where they either zone out and just their brain goes off and it's just like no 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 no, or they act out and they start disrupting the class. And these kind of things are essential. Now, if you want to come into the oral examination and relate that to literature and why it's important to engage them, then you're going to be able to have a sheet, and I want you to write that down, and you're going to refer to it. Okay, so that's the important thing. It's not a memory test. So understand that, because I've seen oral exams which I feel are a little bit of a memory test, and I would never want to do that to pupils or to students. So that's really, really important. So that's the sort of I will get back to you ASAP with that. For me, it's not much fun. There are 45 of you, 45 online tests. That's going to be a lot. It's going to be a full week. So I would have thought we'll be in Notodden for that, and that we'll do a week. And it's important to remember that it is structured discussion. So you'll be able to prepare yourself thoroughly, and you will be able to bring in a mind map or a sheet of notes as support for that. Okay. Because I've also done this before and seen people who come in and just have a meltdown. And according to formal assessment, it should be criterion reference, which means if you have a meltdown, you get an F. but that is not going to happen. Okay, you are going to have your notes in that situation. The exam, on the other hand, is sadly, unless I can get something done about that, which I will try again, I'll see if I can get the EMNA plan changed. I did actually, I've already applied for this sentence, ingen hjälpmedel till skriftlig examen, to be taken away. So I've written to the head of institute when we went through this, and I said, can we get this taken away? Because it means we could do that as a home exam, because I would much rather do that as well. So watch this space. Unfortunately, it didn't work out last term, but I will try again. So that's the syllabus. If anybody's got questions, I'm leaving that there at the moment so you can see it quite clearly. That's the framework we've got. There is the calendar, which I hope you're all following. It's going to basically follow that pattern with Lit and Lang interwoven, with James coming in from next week. James is lovely, and he's very good in this area. So obviously he'll be doing next Tuesday morning. Then you'll be with me in the afternoon. We will your course requirements, only 2. So after Kristen's Nightmare 13 submissions last term, it's very limited this term. Focus is on doing your reading and engaging with the primary sources. I've seen people blogging already, and I'm going to be blogging. I suggest that you keep on blogging, because it will be very, very useful for you. If you read in class, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get you to do oral discussion and write as much as possible. But if you can carry on with that in the blogosphere, West Side, that would be awesome. Okay, cool. Let's push on, because we're already 36 minutes in, and we need to have lunch is scheduled for about half an hour. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move up to home and do, it's been a lot of me talking this morning. I do apologize for that. And I hope you're not too bored. But what we're going to do now is, let's have a look. I think it's easier for me to show this to you as a PDF. I think. I'm not sure if the full screen works, or whether it's maybe easier for me to download it, because that is tiny, isn't it? Perhaps we actually need to. There are no build functions in it. What I'll do is I'll open it as a PDF, and then I will share that as an application separately, because it's pretty 2D what we're going through. Oh no, you can see it. That's fine. Perfect. Are we good with the visuals? I'm going to work through this. I might ask you to, at a certain point, just to do a little 5-minute exercise as individuals on your own. Let me see how that's, does it actually show full screen, or maybe? Well, let's have a look and see. I'm not sure if your view is as good as it should be. Folklore, fairy tales, and Gothic we're starting off with. But really, what I want to start off with is think about and provide a scaffold in terms of what it is we're talking about, and for literature as a whole. And this is a good point, because this is like, literature lesson 1, or this is the intro. So the first thing that we talk about when we talk about literature, I'm going to say that with bunny ears firmly, because literature, Bob Dylan won the Nobel Prize for Literature last year. Literature is a collection of texts. We have traditional forms or formats that we know of. And so it's worth talking about forms. And the forms is what you would find in a very traditional forms of literary forms. And it would say things like novels, poems, drama, short stories, novellas. It would be that. But the word format, which is what I would personally use now, sort of supersedes or takes over from that forms, because it includes new ways of thinking about literature, because it's not just about, these are all, as you see, written texts. They may be performed written texts, like a poem ideally should be, or a drama should be. But if we go down onto formats, and you'll notice over to the right, that's Alita Battle Angel, from the manga graphic novel. Super bit of manga anime. Over on the right hand side, I've included that for particular reasons. If anybody at any point under the term feels like they want to do some work with Alita or Akira or anything particular in that sort of stylistic realm, then I'd strongly encourage that. And I can't help but notice the fact that Alita Battle Angel is being released. I'm not sure when it's coming into Scandinavian cinemas, but it's going into American cinemas pretty soon. Yes, exactly. And boy, does it look good. It's a James Cameron project who was involved in Abyss and Avatar. It looks awesome. It's got some amazing themes in it. So just like I said with Mortal Engines, which is coming out or in cinemas already, and there's the book series. When we look at picture books, graphic novels, or in this sense, we could be talking about fantasy as well, then please don't be shy in wanting to work with some of these other peripheral texts, and that's why I'm alluding to them here as well. I haven't seen the graphic novel at the moment. I will be getting hold of it, so I'll be able to set out some pictures and talk more about it later. But that film looks like a must-see. So in terms of formats, we take this definition of a text. What is a text? Is it just a philological written text? And yes, most texts are, but they're much more than traditional forms. So graphic novels, picture books. We've already sort of touched on these multimodal texts, comics, but more than that as well, and most importantly, when we work with text and culture, with literature, films, television, and hey, Twitter, certainly. We'll have a look at that later. Not today, but I think every year there's like sort of a Twitter stories. I'll pick that out for you next time, because it's just popped into my brain that Neil Gaiman, the author of Coraline, which is another text that often appears in this kind of area and as a peripheral text, you can definitely think about using. Neil Gaiman, prolific author, excellent author. There he is, the Graveyard book there as well. Did a Twitter story, which I'll dig out as well. So we've got not only this shift in what is a form and format and what is a text as a massive question, but we've also got, in terms of thinking about books, because I love books, and we're trying to get children to be readers and to help them be writers, and you can read any kind of text. And to engage them, we have to look at this sort of essential bit of competition, which might even be Twitter as well. Quoting yourself is often the first step. Yes, Moreta as well. They are superb as well. He's been involved in so many positive collaborations. There's those comics. There's The Wolves in the Wall was on the reading list from last term. There's books on Norse mythology. He just did something called Norse mythology, which is well worth looking at in this sort of area as well. Quoting yourself is possibly the first step on the road to madness. But this is, I couldn't help but do this because I was just looking at something I'd written. One of the chief issues to address is motivation. With so many accessible formats, how do we encourage reluctant readers to engage? This was something I wrote to myself in my own diary, and I was thinking primarily about my daughter, because I think she is. Oh, sorry, this is stop. My cursor seems to be flicking constantly and being weird. I don't know what is going on there. And so it's one of my primary issues that I wanted to bring up. We're going to look at self-determination theory as a sort of end. It's all about motivation and engagement. What does that mean? How do we affect that? If I was going to read from you, I mentioned earlier, and in the list again in this flipped classroom, go and have a look. Concon Britain is in the playlist called Text, Society and Culture, where I've put sort of all sorts of associated things. Cunk on Britain. What is cunk? Said Kristin. I don't know. It could be a lot of things, doesn't it? It sort of gives a voice to that sort of generation that you can call, I don't know, the Twitter generation, the iPad generation. In Cunk on Britain, which I've got there, and which is about to turn up here as well soon, under the section called Books, it says, in our culture, a book is read from front to back, with the eye traveling along the line of text from the left to the right. The eye then travels back to the left and down to the next line of text, and then from left to right again, and then across to the phone, in case anyone said anything on Twitter, and then back to the book for a line, then back to the phone, and down the screen on the phone for about 10 minutes, and then back to the book, but back up a line or two to remember where you were and what was happening, then to the phone again, and so on. When I look at my daughter, I have to struggle and think about ways of engaging her because she reads a lot. Reading and text in our culture have become available, obviously, right there next to us. And which among us has not themselves been guilty of constantly checking their phone? Before phones, books were the only thing people had to read, so they could be a lot bigger. Nowadays, big books are only read on long journeys and holidays where the Wi-Fi coverage is patchy. Some books are good, but they're not about your friends and what they're up to, so they can't be as interesting. And they don't update all the time, so a lot of what happens in books happened ages ago, so it's not as good. This general issue of motivation is one of the primary things we have to consider about even looking down in the primary classroom. We know that the phone is used to keep children busy. Look at this from there's the frontispiece, the cover of Cunk on Britain. Really, I'd strongly encourage you to go and watch it. It is hilarious and it's super instructive. Not only that, she addresses things like history and culture and takes the voice of the youth of today, the phone-based youth of today. Here from page 48, 49 in Cunk on Everything, a really big bestseller may be read by as many people as watch a 10-minute YouTube video about a teenager unboxing mascara brushes. So books are still a very important part of our culture. It might seem almost ridiculous or absurd, and yet with the irony of that statement is it's entirely true. That YouTube clip about somebody looking at makeup will have been seen by untold numbers of people across the world. So stepping aside from this issue of motivation and why it's so important and why we need to think about it and what sort of terminology, how what sort of framework we have to think about it. We've talked about these different sort of formats and why books as formats are often challenged by other formats and delivery mechanisms that are sitting there right next to you the whole time. You saw there from the Emner plan, we have to think about genre. Genre. Nobody knows how to say that word correctly. It's French, so it immediately puts most people under stress. I say genre. You could say genre if you're going to be completely OTT. And there are traditional literary genres. And here they are. Here are some of them: comedy, drama, the epic. I bet James knows how to say genre. There are plenty of ways how to say. There are actually about 6 different variations. Epic, romance, satire, tragedy. And can I just say there's no correct version of any of those, Marlena. Um, uh, these are traditional literary genres, but you can see the frontispiece there is from Oscar Wilde retelling of a fairy tale called The Nightingale and the Rose that was there on our first meeting for book club. Um, Let me just clip through this quickly as well. But today, when we think about genre, we often think about genre fiction, and we think in many different terms. We think about genres like crime, fantasy, romance, science fiction. The way that books are organized on a shelf or in Amazon when you search for them. And you could then look into each of these and think about subgenres. Um, so yeah, that's a really good question from the wall as well. An epic, the Odyssey, Homer's The Odyssey is what you think of it, is a long narrative poem that tells a story that's part of an oral tradition. And it's one of the three subgenres of poetry. And so that's what an epic is. It's really a classic tale that's not descriptive. It's not about a mood. Um, it's a story, a narrative, normally about a hero, and the main sort of archetypal example of an epic is Homer's The Odyssey. However, today, because that's well, we mean epic to say a story of epic proportions, as in it seems to have a very long narrative, and normally an epic might be something to do with world changing events. Like the Lord of the Rings, I think that's a very good example as well. So, epic could be both a technical description of a sub-genre of poetry as a form of literature, which is really outmoded and historical. Or today, an epic could be just about anything that is described of having sort of epic proportions as a story. So something which is universal and normally has very great events involved in it as well. Oh, and then when I grew up, here you go as well, just to put it into even clearer distinction. A lot of you will know that when I went to primary school, I grew up in South Wales in Swansea. And when we thought something was really good in Swansea, we used to say, "Oh, see, that's epic." So we used to use it as just a slang term for anything that was really cool, and it's still used today as well. Epic, meaning of epic proportions, and it's the same as classic, awesome. But I grew up saying that when I was about 7 as a young boy at primary school in Swansea. The picture here as well, just to colour in and point you, is one of the photos from Ranson Riggs' Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. A wonderful, wonderful concept for a book to string together a narrative based on old pictures. Do check out the audio sampler. I think there's a whole book there as well. Have a listen. It's really important to get a taste of what different books are doing. Excuse me. So, yes, det var episkt. Alltså, eller hur? Yes, epic. Epic. Which is funny, really, because then say that was poetic. You know, that was just totally poetic. No, it's an awesome word, epic. Let's have a look. With these genres, what the genres we can also try to sort of we're sort of trying to. This is an analysis, isn't it? We've gone from like, okay, we've got some books, but texts are more than books. We've got different formats. Those formats seem to be in genres. This is only a model. And nothing stays strictly within its genre. But what is a genre? It's a set of what we call conventions, which are expectations when we hear it for what it's going to be. So if we're in the record store and we're there and we're going jazz, that section which says jazz, it's going to come with a certain a number of conventions that's going to make me think, okay, can I put Tupac in jazz? Can I put Gil Scott-Heron in jazz? Can I put James Brown, Diddy Rascal? Can I put Dizzy Gillespie? Dizzy Gillespie, that's jazz, and I know that's jazz. And here as well, that's how genres work, isn't it? There are sets of conventions which are expectations. There are very important ways of working with literature as well, because if you know, and here, I don't know, do we have any Cumberbitches out there? Supporters of Benedict Cumberbatch? Walk to Mawson, Walk Quelling Mawson. There's a picture of the young. Yes. Do we have any fans? Cumberbitches. He famously described them as once, who were his fan base. The Cumberbitches who love here Benedict Cumberbatch in Sherlock Holmes. So here we can say Sherlock Holmes, a classic, obviously in terms of a specific genre. What is that genre? We had crime up before, and crime could be different sorts of things. Here we have, again, loosely termed detective fiction. So let's have a little look at what detective fiction might include. What sort of conventions? I might even be missing things. I will probably add. I'm going to have a look at. Oh no, you worried? You seriously worried? She's worried. Don't worry. He's okay. Technical term, Cumberbitch. Technical term, Cumberbitch. Just spell that out for you as well whilst we're on it, which is. Oh, of course I do.